everybody. We got for you a very, very special guest. Yet another very special guest. Everybody, welcome to the show, Winston Gambro. Welcome, Winston.
Hey, thanks so much for having me on.
Yeah, glad to have you. Glad you can make it. And we got a few things to talk about today. Some exciting stuff with Rex Radley and Overflow. Want to talk about that a little bit, but all our first time guests, we like to do a little bit of an origin story. So, I know you've done graphic design, or you do graphic design, right? Web design, you said. So, give us a little bit of that. Like, what got you into comics, and have you always been a comics fan?
Yeah, well, I first got into comics one time in like a grocery store. Somehow I got my hands on this big book of Spider-Man. Like, it's like 3 feet wide, and it just lays out all of Spider-Man's history from the 60s to 2006 when the book was published. And I just read it front back. And it just got me obsessed with the Marvel Universe. And eventually I got the rest of the books, the Fantastic Four, the Hulk and such. And then I kind of just wanted to tell my own stories from that. I'm like, I've always loved drawing. I can actually tell a full story just like this, just like Spider-Man does.
Right. And I mean, we talk about this quite a bit, Chris, where like you can just, if you're a good enough artist, you understand like almost like the layout for panels and stuff. You could just tell a story just by your art, like you said, right? Mm-hmm. So that's kind of what came to you first.
Yeah.
So
especially at
how
first,
does that work? Is the dialogue? Yep.
Sorry, go ahead.
You can go ahead.
I guess I was always more artistically minded. I think we're on a delay here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Chris, sorry to everybody out there. I think we have a delay, but
yeah. Yes. You can go ahead.
So I've always been more artistically minded, I guess. Just drifted to that more in school than anything. Like all my homework is just covered in doodles and just filling up margins of notebooks with random art. And then I always just loved telling stories. So that's what I jumped to. It's more, I'm definitely more of an art focused individual when it comes to comics than the actual writing. But my goal is just kind of to produce every story in my head. And there's no way I'm going to be able to do that drawing it all myself.
Yeah, that's interesting because how does that work when you're developing ideas? Do you see like you want to draw something that's cooler, or do you just jot down like plot ideas?
I would say that I'll sometimes just come up with a cool visual, like Overflow was inspired by just a lot of cyberpunk stuff and kind of that lo-fi style that's so hip right now, where it's kind of like grainy 90s anime VHS effects. And like I want to set a tone with every story, so I do really go into it with a visual mind first, and at the same time I just have Google Docs of random ideas, random cinematic shots, or random themes, and then they kind of merge, like the visual and the actual writing of it.
So when you're making a comic for yourself, are you writing out a full script for everything, or do you just go by like kind of your layout and what you want to do, and then just take it from there when you're doing the drawings?
Yeah, I still do a full script, even if it's for me. I think it really helps with planning, at least personally. Like, if I just went ahead and made it up as I went along, I know there would be so many things that I would regret down the line, like, oh, I wish I'd put this in, I wish I had done this instead. And scripting out and planning ahead of time really prevents those kinds of mistakes from happening.
Yeah, that makes sense. And I mean, you name dropped Overflow, so give us the lowdown on that. What is Overflow?
Oh, sure. Yeah, Overflow is a cyberpunk mystery I wrote and drew. It's both a mystery within a futuristic world filled with neon, but it's also thematically about how dangerous apathy can be and how the world that we live in is just slowly falling apart, and we all know it, but we're all too apathetic to care about it.
And it's, I mean, the kind of like base plot is there's a hacker on the loose, right? And so that's kind of where like the cyberpunk comes into play, right?
Yeah, the overall synopsis is a former cop turned PI is forced to prove her brother's innocence after he's framed for a war crime, and she uncovers this group of hackers that are attempting to change the world through any means necessary.
When you're doing that book, what is your inspiration for the mechs in that? Because I get the feeling that you're a man who used to play Mech Warrior.
Unfortunately not. I want to say I just pulled it out of my imagination, but after I posted the art of those pages, my friend goes, "Oh, so you just ripped this off from Sonic Adventure 2?" And so I think subconsciously that's where that came from.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I completely forgot about that.
I mean, I like the way the futuristicness is used. It's kind of like you don't pay too much attention to it, where you're more focused on the relationship between all the characters, right? Or how, like, their relationship with other people that they care about.
Yeah, I'd say it was less about the future and more just the very near future. I want it to show like that it's very close. Like the phones are, what are we on, iPhone 12 or something? This is an iPhone 16. It's all glass. We'll
Right.
get there in our lifetime. The war machines are a little bit ahead, but we'll see them eventually. So it's just enough technology to show that it's in the future, but the very near future. We'll all live through this.
Yeah. And I think that's what kind of was interesting to me about it. But so this is just a one-shot trade, and it's already printed and out there, right?
Yep. Yeah. 118 full graphic novel, completely printed, available.
And how is that for you, doing all the art and the writing? Is it that's quite a bit of a task in itself, right?
It is. This was the biggest project I ever drew. Before this, I was just doing single issues, and I did not expect it. I guess I didn't really, expect it to take this long. It was just 2 years of grinding, and as you can probably tell just from me describing the themes, it's kind of a downer. And if I'm just writing and drawing it for 2 years straight, it was soul crushing. Like no one ever, I don't think I ever drew a smile in the whole series.
Yeah, it now that you mention it, I don't think, like, because we got a chance to read it, I don't think there's ever a moment where it's like, oh, this gets better for anybody.
Yeah, it's one of those comics, like Scalped or something, where it's just, how sad can we make these characters?
Yeah. It's like, oh, that's not rock bottom yet. We're gonna get there though.
Well, could you imagine being the artist that had to draw crossed? Like,
oh no,
God, the shit that he had to put in that book.
No, I cannot. No, yeah, that takes a special kind of person. But and then we could go over to something that's a little more, I would say, like upbeat. It would be your Rex Radley series, right? Can we talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, sure. Kind of following Overflow, I wanted to do something way more lighthearted. So Rex Radley Boy Adventure is my all ages comic book. It's inspired by every cartoon I loved growing up, like Ninja Turtles, DuckTales, Power Rangers, mostly Johnny Quest, because it's all about a boy adventuring and just traveling the world and seeing these crazy kind of pulpy adventure stuff. And so it's an anthology that I've written every story, but each story is drawn by a different artist. So I could kind of network with all these really cool artists, get to see their styles, and also introduce how different artists can tell a similar story and offer a lot of variety for people that might not be familiar with comics, like kids. And I also wanted to kind of show that this is, or make a comic book for kids, that something I would have wanted to read as a child.
Yeah, and I think you've kind of hit the nail on the head with that that style of like like Johnny Quest. But I think that's a cool approach you have with going with a different artist every issue. I really like that.
Yeah, it's been a lot of fun just meeting so many artists, but just how they interpret the characters. Like, I have a character that's a giant cave woman, and every single artist has drawn her differently, and it's been really interesting to see. Like, one person will put a lot of emphasis on their backgrounds, one person will put a lot of emphasis on their facial expressions, and at the heart of it, it's all the same character, the same world, but it's so interesting to see how a different person will tackle the challenge.
Would you say with Rex that like each of these issues that you're doing are all going to be like one and done stories, so that a kid or anybody could grab just one issue, have a story right there, and not necessarily be dependent on long? It's only 2 issues so far, but dependent on what happened in the following issue.
Yeah, absolutely. It's all supposed to be just one and done anthologies that you can just pick up at any time. It's just a bunch of very short 5-page stories that you can just hop in, hop out of, and really a latching on point that you don't need a lot of continuity for if you're just learning to read comics.
Yeah, that always helps too with making something all ages. But I want to ask about this Radley Adventure Club you have on your website. What's that all about?
So both Rex Radleys were through Kickstarter, and a big part of Kickstarter is the add-ons and the additional tiers to get people to pledge more money. And I'm a graphic designer, and I love just creating cool logos, cool art. So I came up with just these little pins and stickers and iron-on badges for the Radley Adventure Society or Club, and just inspired by like vintage Boy Scout stuff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's a great idea. That's awesome. And then you have a couple other things on your website. Do you want to talk about the blank?
Yeah,
What's
sure. That? So there was a time in 2020 when it looked like the U.S. Post Office was going to die. So a lot of people were just making pen pals.
Yep.
I drew a kind of experimental comic called The Blank. It's inspired by this awesome podcast called The Hum by O'Neill and Freeman. The podcast is about a detective that goes to a small town to investigate this weird noise, and he slowly loses his mind. And so I wanted to recreate it in a visual medium, and it's about him chasing the blank, which is some impossible visual image. And to mess with this comic book, I made it each one is unique. So after they're printed, I will slather pages in whiteout or hole punch images or like black out words and stuff. So as the main character slowly loses his mind, you kind of feel like you're as disoriented as him because it slowly gets crazier and harder to grasp onto.
Well, that's a really cool idea. And you made it different for every issue too, right?
Yeah, each one is like I physically white out the pages, so no one will be completely unique. And I thought this would be a cool idea. It is a very time-consuming idea because I will often have 25 copies of The Blank lying around my office with a fan on them, so the whiteout will dry before I can ship.
Yeah, that's, you have to wait for that. And then I saw CPS on your website, and I was like, wait a second, that's not the normal CPS that we know, though, right? So what's that about?
So CPS, I've only colored that series. It's Child Possession Services. It is about a government organization that helps children that are possessed by demons, and it's the detective involved in that, or investigator, I guess, is just pulled into a very small, very personal case, and I colored it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't quite have the log lines
cool.
for that one because I didn't write it.
Awesome. And all of this stuff is available on your website, right?
Yeah.
All your titles
signed. Gumroad.com/Winston Gambro if you want to check out my work. Overflow can be read for free at overflowcomic.com if you want to try before you buy.
And so, I mean, I know you just put out Overflow, so you're celebrating the victory of something being finished, but do you see, I mean, obviously you want to do more Rex, but do you see anything else coming up that you're planning on doing?
Yeah, definitely. I have an active webtoon, Gumshoe City, which is kind of a cartoony world where every resident is a detective, like the waiter, the chef, the person eating. Everyone is a detective, each with their own specialty, and it's very Looney Tunes. The first mystery is about a beef specialist who finds his best friend's body and has to prove who do it. It's very much Chew, if you guys read that. Like, that world was very based on food, and this world is, what if instead of food it was detectives? So that's at gumshoecitycomic.com. It's drawn by the amazing Michael Lee Harris, who just brings so much fun life to the series. And then from there, I'm also... go ahead.
Yeah, I just wanted to say about that. Yeah, Gumshoe City, it's... like you said about the art, it is a very like Looney Tunes-esque, but it's the way it's laid out with the panels and like some of the film reel stuff he does in the latest issue is really cool.
Oh yeah, he brings so much life to it. It's like he'll come up with random stuff that I would never think of. In the script, it says like a character leaves the room, and he just says, "Is it okay if I have the character slamming through the wall like Wile E. Coyote?" And I'm like, "Oh yeah, that's so much better."
Yeah, way better. Perfect.
And then I'm also drawing Fables of Reclamation, which is a medieval story about black knights fighting monsters, and I'm just drawing that for the writer, but that should be coming out in the very near future.
Awesome.
So busy man.
Yeah,
very much so.
Yeah,
I like to stay busy.
Going on too. Yeah. Awesome. Well, I mean, yeah, we're going to send everybody to your website. If we want our listeners or followers to follow you on social media, where can they go?
Conveniently, I'm at Winston Gambro on all social media. My very weird name made it very easy to get a Twitter and Instagram handle.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah, everybody, so make sure to go to your social media, follow Winston, and as always, all these links will be in the show notes down below, so check out his work. Overflow is really good, and I'm probably going to read some Gumshoe City tonight once we're done with this. But Winston, thanks so much for being on, man. Hopefully we'll talk to you again soon, and have a good one.
Thank you so much for having me on, guys. Have a great day.